if Bitcoin is money and money is information, right? There is really little protection of information. The transition into a Bitcoin standard is going to be very chaotic. If it's too rapid, it's sort of a demonetization event. The old currency starts to become useless and everyone is scrambling to get into Bitcoin. The current laws don't really do anything to protect people in the age at which money is information. So privacy, respect for privacy, sovereignty, all these things need to be boosted up. And I think this comes with the work that we're doing to engage with governments to slowly get them to understand Bitcoin. Money is just human time and energy. It's a way that you can store your time and energy for the future. So you can work harder, produce more goods, and your goods might be perishable, right? It could be fruits or vegetables, but you can sell them for money and then store the money for the future. So I wouldn't say it's like a battery, but it's a way for you to store in this ledger. And I believe the ledger has to not be corruptible by anything, because that is how people end up stealing from other people, right? When you have central banks that can print money, they can effectively steal your time as a person by removing value from the instrument you stored your time and energy in, which is, for the most part, digitized or paper pieces of fiat. So that's the biggest thing. Money is really a way that you can motivate people to do something, right? Because it is valuable. It is stored value over time. And being able to print money just lets you manipulate and control the population. My thinking is that the biggest threat outside of ourselves and tinkering with Bitcoin and centralizing it is really aliens. Because if you have an alien civilization with more advanced technology, we really don't have anything to offer them. And if you think again of what I just said, that Bitcoin is stored time and energy, human time and energy, we don't really want, they don't really want our technology. Right? Do they want a Tesla? Maybe to play with in the way that we might have wanted a beaver pelt or a bead necklace when those things were money. But do they want a Tesla or even, Starship as a technological thing that they can use functionally, practically? Probably not. They have more advanced technology. So basically, they would be rendering Bitcoin useless at that point if there was an alien civilization with their own version of Bitcoin. Because we would want their Bitcoin because we want to buy things from them. We want their spaceships and their cars or their flying cars or their anti-gravity engines and whatnot. I believe it's good for the world to adopt Bitcoin sooner rather than later for the reasons we've discussed. But the other major point that a lot of people forget is that the transition into a Bitcoin standard is going to be very chaotic. If it's too rapid, it's sort of a demonetization event. The old currency starts to become useless and everyone is scrambling to get into Bitcoin. And that can entail a lot of human suffering. So back in 2016, I think there was a demonetization event in India where they remove, I think, $5 and $10 rupee notes out of circulation. And, a lot of people died, actually. I think maybe a dozen or so people died from exposure or being unable to pay for medical procedures because the hospital didn't want to take the old currency, right? So these things can be very chaotic. So imagine that type of event, but not just for a 5 and 10 rupee note, but for all the money of a country. And without knowledge of how Bitcoin works, you can see the opportunity for scammers. Like, okay, the Japanese yen is worthless now. Give it to me and I'll give you, Bcash. That could definitely happen, or worse, right?
Yeah.
So I think education is so important to make people understand how Bitcoin works, even at a very basic level. And this is also why we're building Aqua. We're trying to make a very accessible wallet that anybody can just use and experiment with and get a little bit of Bitcoin. Because getting some Bitcoin is actually the best lesson. You can read all the books you want, but the experience of receiving your first dollar or your first couple Satoshis is really really eye-opening that you have this and it's bearer asset. It's not custodial. And it's in your control. And if you lose the keys to that wallet, it's gone. I think that is a revelation that most people have the first time they receive Bitcoin. And then you get to the fear part where you're sending it, and I'm sending money over the internet to this string of letters and numbers. Is it going to work? Right? So, like, getting people through these hurdles, I think, is the best way to educate them. But yeah, I see the transition could be very messy. And at the same time, when I'm talking about Omega, a lot of people think I'm just pumping the price and, introducing FOMO. But I really believe this is really going to happen, because these transitions from one money to another are not very gradual. They are very rapid, and they're unexpected usually. So I'm trying to make people understand that, expect the unexpected, plan accordingly. Suddenly is very sudden. But,
I saw your thread the other day. Suddenly, then sudden is suddenly, and then suddenly, I don't know, it just kept going on and on and on.
Yeah. So, we want to prepare people, and working with governments is a good way to do that, counterintuitively, because people look towards their governments for guidance and wisdom. So, having a country like El Salvador say Bitcoin's legal tender, that changes a lot of things, and people start to pay attention, I think.
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. The second part is doing this stuff is good for Bitcoiners, because if you think about it, the current laws don't offer much protection if Bitcoin is money and money is information, right? There is really little protection of information. And there is also not a lot of understanding about basic IT security in the general population. People still use passwords like, password 123. And even in the Bitcoin space / crypto, you've heard people store their seed in Evernote or Google Drive or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So security is a big thing, but the laws to protect people, I think, need to be massively transformed, because, Bitcoin is information. Information is money. So you could have, a border search. I think, being from Australia, like the border officers have the right to seize your electronic devices and force you to open them, right?
Yeah, I get stopped every time.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to go to Australia. But that has to change before Bitcoin can be safely used by the people. Otherwise, you have a border officer that says, show me your phone. They unlock it. They poke around. They look at your seed phrase. What's to stop them from memorizing those words, or, capturing it on video? Or maybe they didn't capture it on video, but there is a system that captures video as they're looking at phones, and then someone else steals your money. But these things are not really dealt with right now. But I think they do need to be discussed and brought to light, that the current laws don't really do anything to protect people in the age at which money is information. So privacy, respect for privacy, sovereignty, all these things need to be boosted up. And I think this comes with the work that we're doing to engage with governments to slowly get them to understand Bitcoin, and then what the repercussions are after that, right? That they need to adapt for to live in this Bitcoin age.
Imagine Bitcoin is like the global world reserve currency. We've had that event, the strategic Bitcoin reserves played out, nation states. They're all on their balance sheet. What are maybe the top one or two things that you would fear in that situation?
Well, there's definitely a concern of centralization of Bitcoin. Having too much Bitcoin in one country is not ideal. And this is why also we're trying to engage with more countries to educate them that they should also put together a Bitcoin stockpile. But sadly, a lot of people are looking towards the US to lead. So it's likely that they'll come after the US does their strategic reserve. There's worry that there's too much mining in the US now. Previously, there was a lot of concern about mining in China because it was 70%. Less so now, but now the US is starting to ramp up. But I know a lot of the US miners are looking to diversify outside of the US too, because they don't want to be beholden to another Biden type administration in the future. So that's also good that we're seeing some of that initiative. But yeah, really, it's just the concentration that's not ideal. But there's not really much you can do about it other than what we're doing to educate more countries that they need Bitcoin.
But BlackRock, Wall Street are buying so many Bitcoin. And then MicroStrategy is buying an insane amount of Bitcoin. And the price isn't really moving at the moment. But I guess, like, what's the next catalyst to do it? Or maybe even on a deeper level. Like, why do we go sideways for so long and then we just jump up and then we go sideways for so long?
The imbalance is just staggering, like 20 times more demand than supply. And there is a theory that it's OGs selling, but I really don't think that's the case. Like, you don't hold your Bitcoin from $10 to $100,000 and then suddenly decide, yeah, I'm going to sell it all. Maybe you take some off, but I don't believe those statistics that say like OGs have sold a few $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. I think they're just moving to cold storage or upgrading or whatnot. So where does that come from? There's a couple theories. One is that there's sort of a pool of coins on exchanges somewhere in the 2 million mark. And that is sort of sloshing around, facilitating market making, maybe arbitrage, and maybe trying to trade. And I think what's happening is some of that is being whittled down because they're trying to sell it, but they may not be able to buy back. So it's just a matter of that the new buyers taking it off of exchange. But I have a feeling that that's actually whittled down significantly, and we'll see the effects of that soon. The other theory I had for long sideways periods is simply that there is some entity out there or some exchange that is naked selling Bitcoin that they don't have. And
scary.
There is precedent for that, which is FTX.
Yeah.
They sold Bitcoin they didn't have, to be put. And theoretically, if you just sold Bitcoin you don't have, then the price should keep on decreasing. But at the same time, you might notice that Bitcoin dominance is increasing, right? So my theory is that there are some entities out there naked selling altcoins. And people that buy altcoins, they typically leave them on exchanges. So there can't really be a run on the bank. There's no such thing as proof of keys for altcoins, right? They're either staking it or they're leaving it there for group staking, or like staking through staking services, or just for trading. But you don't really take altcoins into your own wallet. It's just not a thing, right? So if this entity exists that is naked selling Bitcoin, needs to top up, what they can do is naked sell some altcoins to rebalance their Bitcoin holdings, because I would imagine that it's some sort of operating entity, and they need to meet Bitcoin withdrawals sometime. So what they can do is naked sell altcoins, buy back a little bit of Bitcoin, and that should give you the sideways action, right? It goes down a bit and it comes back up, and it kind of hovers around. But I don't think this is a long-term sustainable thing if this is happening. But that's my theory.